So what do you do when a simple housing dispute gets, well, really complicated? Your first thought might be to call a lawyer, right? But what if the answer isn't in some legal book, but out there in the cosmos? That's what we're diving into today. This fascinating idea that there's a cosmic solution to a very, very down-to-earth problem. And that, right there, is the big question we're tackling. Is this super frustrating property issue just a legal headache, a bunch of paperwork and arguments? Or could it actually be a sign of something much, much deeper? Maybe a lesson from the universe itself, kind of pushing us to change. It's a pretty wild idea, for sure. So let's break down how we even get to a conclusion like that. All right, first up, a landlord's practical problem. Because before we can get to the cosmic stuff, we have to start right here on the ground with a situation that I'm sure a lot of property owners or even renters will find, painfully familiar. So here's the deal. A landlord bought a villa years ago. Now, technically, it was an illegal building. But for something like 13 years, it was fine. It just wasn't an issue. But now, all of a sudden, the rules change and new tenants can't get loans or housing insurance for the place. So this creates a huge mess, and the source actually calls both the landlord and the tenants co-victims. They're both just stuck in this impossible situation. Okay, so you've got this very real-world, very concrete problem. You'd expect some pretty concrete solutions, right? Well, this is where things get interesting, because the advice given here takes a sharp turn away from the predictable and straight into the philosophical. I mean, logically, you're probably thinking along these lines, right? Get a lawyer, negotiate with the tenant, maybe just wait and see if the government changes the policy back. The standard playbook for these kinds of problems. But that is not at all the advice that was given. And there it is. The answer has nothing to do with property law and everything to do with personal growth. The whole situation gets completely reframed. Suddenly, it's not a legal issue anymore. It's a natural consequence of stagnating. The philosophy here is that the universe itself is forcing a move because the landlord just hasn't grown. Okay, so to even begin to understand this pretty jarring piece of advice, we have to get into the core principle behind it. The source calls it the law of mass, and it's presented as this fundamental law of nature that governs, everything, from the stars up in the sky to our own lives and careers down here on Earth. And here's the key thing to get. In this philosophy, mass isn't what you think. It's not about physical weight. It's a metaphor for your inner substance, your experience, your wisdom, your skills. The more you learn and grow, the bigger your mass gets. And you guessed it, the more you stagnate, the smaller it becomes. And this really breaks down the two sides of that coin. Think about stars. The source uses them as an analogy. They have enormous mass, and what are they always doing? They're moving. People with high mass are the same way. Their growth just naturally pushes them onward and upward. But what about low mass? Well, that leads to stagnation, and eventually nature itself steps in and forces you to move, often to a lower spot, just to get you learning and growing again. So this whole thing basically creates a cycle, like a continuous loop. It starts with you stagnating somewhere. Your mass starts to shrink. Then, bam, some external force, maybe a job loss or, hey, a housing crisis, forces you to move. And this new, probably tougher situation, that's your new classroom. You're basically forced to learn, to grow, to increase your mass. And it's only after you do that that you earn the right to move up again, this time on your own terms. Okay, so this cosmic law sounds pretty abstract, right? How does it actually apply to our everyday lives? Well, the source is really clear on this. This isn't just about planets and stars. It's about our jobs, our homes, really our whole personal journey. Here's a really great and honestly super relatable example. Think about a restaurant owner who just stops innovating. They stop learning, they get comfortable. According to this philosophy, if their business fails, it's not just because of the economy. It's because their mass has decreased. So the universe forces them into what you might call a lower position, like having to go work for someone else. But it's not a punishment. It's actually a necessary step. It's like going back to school, learning what they need to learn, and rebuilding their mass so they can eventually become an owner again. And this brings us right back to that original housing dispute. See, from this point of view, the problem isn't really the illegal building status or the new loan policies. The real root cause is that the landlord got stuck in a comfortable, low-cost, low-growth situation for over a decade. They were benefiting from it, sure, but they weren't striving or growing. And now it's like the universe is just saying, all right, class is over, time to move. All right, so we've got this law of mass that's supposedly pushing us to grow. But that kind of begs a bigger question, doesn't it? Why? Why would the universe even be set up like this? Well, the source gives us one final, really big picture idea. Maybe we're looking at our lives all wrong. So here's the ultimate worldview that holds this whole philosophy together. The idea is that Earth isn't just a planet we happen to live on. It's a special school, one designed for gods to come and learn. And the curriculum? Well, it's life itself. Every single challenge is just a lesson designed to help us grow. And this is probably the biggest leap in the whole philosophy. It's saying you're not just a person with a housing problem. You are a god in a physical body. And you're here for one reason, to increase your mass. And the coolest part is, this system is designed to help you. The moment you genuinely start to make an effort, you'll start meeting people of higher mass. Mentors, teachers, who can actually help you grow. Which kind of brings us to the final thought I want to leave you with. It's a really powerful way to look at your own struggles, isn't it? I mean, if you take this idea seriously, even just for a minute, it forces you to re-examine everything. That frustrating job you have, that difficult relationship, that financial setback. What if none of it is just random bad luck? What if every single challenge is a lesson, tailor-made by the universe just for you? So the big question is, what is your current situation trying to teach you?